This is a discussion around the coach's journey. Now, for those that aren't aware, if you're brand new to these live streams, every once in a while I'll share these with the public. And this one I did, as I mentioned, because I think it's a really important subject to discuss. But before we get into the subject, also, really, the primary purpose for this live stream is that this is actually a part of coach certification training. Master Coach University, once a year, runs an advanced certification where our students, most advanced and our most fundamental kind of basic level students, more beginner students, come together. We all come together and we learn the most advanced disciplines of coaching that Master Coach University teaches. And these disciplines are really, in my opinion, the key important deliverables that a coach can offer their client. And so inside of certification, we really cover some really serious elements of coaching, but we only have so much time together because it's kind of a sprint of a training. It's 4 weeks long and we cover 3 advanced disciplines in 4 weeks. So the reason why I'm running these live streams, especially for those of you that are students of Master Coach University, those of you that are in the certification training, at least this time around, is to really fill in the cracks and give you some additional details, some shading, some more understandings, and also to answer questions around some of the more complicated and more sophisticated aspects of those modalities or those disciplines of coaching that we're learning here. Now, those of you that are mastery program students, you know this stuff backwards and forwards, so you're going to have a lot to share with our basic level students as well, or our more beginner students. But I just want to make sure that really every little bit is covered here. So we're going to be having daily live streams. If you're on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. If you haven't already subscribed, hit the bell because you will get a notification for these live streams as they come through on like whatever device you have. I'm not going to be emailing these out most of the time. This is like the once in a blue moon right before we're starting certification that I decided to do this. By the way, if you are considering being a part of certification, I think we still have a slot open. I sent out an email this morning or this early afternoon about that. But neither here nor there. Today or tonight is about the coach's journey. So let's get right into it. Now, first of all, think of this like here. I gotta actually change frames here. Think of this coach's journey like different routes to transformation. So we want to transform the lives of our clients. We want to transform somebody's business. We want to transform their physical health or vitality or well-being or their attractiveness. We want to transform their relationships, right? That's what we are after giving to those of us to those that are after coaching, that sign up for coaching with us. But as the coach, we're the leaders, right? And a leader goes first. A leader has to walk ahead many times of the pack that they're leading, of the group that they're leading, of the tribe that they're leading, so to speak. Now, that doesn't mean that you'll always be an expert in everything that your clients need to be an expert in. That doesn't mean that you've run every business that your clients run, or you've had every relationship that your clients are going to have. Obviously, that's impossible, and it's really not needed for a coach because coaches aren't about being like experts in a specific area of knowledge. Coaches are not just consultants. We're here to lead from a different perspective. So we still have to go first, but not in the way that a lot of consultants would think, well, I need to know this backwards and forwards, and I need to have experience in this industry. Maybe as coaches, we want some of that too. But the way that we go first is not from a perspective of saying, here's what you're supposed to do. Everybody has to be like me. A coach goes first more from a transformational perspective, because that's our job as coaches. Our job is to cause transformation. You might call it breakthrough, some kind of change, some kind of real progress. And that's above and beyond just knowledge transfer or skills transfer the way like a trainer would facilitate, or even like doing it for them. Like that's not what coaching is about solely. Now, I'm not saying a coach can't do those things. I really believe a coach could do any of those things, but the core of who a coach is someone who really takes on the profound uh, capability, the profound commitment, and the profound responsibility and privilege of causing transformation, causing breakthroughs for their clients in whatever niche or whatever area they're working with their clients on. So if we are trying to help our clients find routes to transformation, to find a route to transformation, right? We got to go first. We need to be transforming ourselves. We need to take on breakthroughs for ourselves. Doesn't mean the same exact breakthrough, but there needs to be a journey that we take so that we ultimately transform ourselves. And we got to do that first to some extent before we expect that we can pass that kind of transformation on to our clients, to the people that we're going to lead. So we're leaders, we're coaches, and we got to go first. So there's two different routes that I'm putting down here in terms of like a journey. Think of this like a journey. The first one is what one might call a quest, like a quest that a knight might go on, right? To find the special treasure or to slay the dragon. You know, it's more of a heroic adventure, right? The knight that goes on a quest to accomplish something. And there are many coaches like that. There's lots of coaches that they're like the heroes for their clients because they didn't just like transform themselves. They've accomplished something. They've discovered something. You know, they've gone on a heroic journey that most others do not go on. Now, there's another think of it like more of an everyman or an everywoman's journey, which is more of a pilgrimage, right? So, you know, people of different faiths or of different backgrounds or of different cultures will go on various types of pilgrimages, I guess you'd say, plural pilgrimage. They will go on a different type of pilgrimage, depending on who they are, to discover something within themselves, to see where the heroes before them have gone, to kind of track those steps, so to speak. That doesn't mean like they're some kind of hero themselves. They're following a tradition or they're following a path that some other hero or some other story, so to speak, some other journey has already laid before them. You know, the hero's path, so to speak, has already been well known. It's been well walked on those pilgrimages. So this is like, you know, there could be tens of millions of people that will go on various pilgrimages or a different pilgrimage. And so that is something that will still provide transformative basis, that will provide wisdom, that provide discovery, provide breakthroughs potentially, provide spiritual and emotional transformation or wisdom. But it's not the kind of quest where you go and kind of like win the love, or you slay the dragon, or you know, beat the record or something like that. A pilgrimage is not about you, right? But that's a very transformative journey. And so whatever kind of version you tend towards, the heroic side of things or more of the pilgrim side of things, like a follower of something, like a loyal follower of something that is, you know, pursuing something special, but not necessarily as a hero, not trying to be like the star or the guru, so to speak. These are routes to transformation. And after those journeys, you're never the same. Have you ever been on a journey in your life? And I'd love you to hit me up in the chat if you can have any kind of answer to this at all. Have you ever been on a journey in your life where it wasn't just like a trip somewhere? It wasn't just like, okay, we're taking a road trip, we're taking a vacation, or you know, I'm going to the store, you know, not like a short-term type of journey, but a long-term journey that might have taken maybe months or years. And maybe it was about a goal for you, like I'm pursuing something, like a career goal or a learning goal, or like a journey where you left home, you were in a different place, you met different people and experienced life in a different way. You ever been on a journey like that? A journey where afterwards even if it was years later, you could look back on that journey. You could look back on that journey and realize I'm different because of that journey that I took. I'm not the same person. I'm not quite the same person. What kind of journeys have you gone on where that's been apparent for you? Not everybody does that. You know, some people have very static lives where they just kind of live out their life in the same way every day, and there's really no growth or transformation available to them. Maybe early life there was something, but then now they're really, really static. But for many of us, especially leaders and coaches, you know, we've lived lives where we've already transformed in so many very deep ways. You know, we've really seen some things happen, right? And most of the time, a lot of times when we go on those quests or those pilgrimages, somebody help me with the plural of pilgrimage. Anyway, when we go on those journeys, a lot of times we don't even intend to transform ourselves. We're just pursuing something. We just need to learn something. It's maybe something that is just necessary. Maybe we didn't even want to do it. But once we're there and things start happening, and then years later, you know, we're kind of came back home, or we're no longer on that journey anymore. We've kind of settled down a bit. We look back on that and we say, man, I learned so much there. Or I was a whole different person before I went on that journey, before I took that trip. Great. Megan says, going to jail and getting sober. That is a journey. That's what I'm talking about, Megan. Thank you for that. You know, it's like that. You probably weren't like, hey, I think I'll go to jail and experience what that's like. Actually, it actually brings up. We've never talked about this before, Megan, but brings up the night that I spent in jail. This is like, I don't know, 18 years ago, something like that. And I had no interest in doing it, but as soon as I realized I was going, I started thinking positive. You know, it's just like a tick for me, right? Well, I'm going to actually experience what this is like. You know, what it's actually like to be taken into custody. You know, it's never happened to me before. And I was definitely never the same after that as well, no doubt about it. But we've all gone on, or not all of us, but many coaches, many leaders have gone on real journeys. By the way, this is not always like going from A to B, right? It's not always a physical journey of going to jail or going to New York City or you know, traveling to a new place to live or a new place where you'd have a job or something like that. Sometimes they're just journeys that we take on the inside. You know, things that we take on. Usually there's some outer journey to it as well, but a lot of times people will go on an inner journey that other people wouldn't even recognize because of books that you've read or programs that you've gone through. So I'll give you an example from my world. You know, I was originally not a coach. I started out, you know, professionally as a musician. Every once in a while, I've mentioned that here on these live streams. And so I was in music school after high school, went to a local music school, and I was, you know, really busily trying to get better and learn my craft because I really wanted to make a life out of that, make a living doing what a lot of people would only dream of. And I thought, wow, this is something I could be really grateful for if I can pull it off, right? Because a lot of people wanted to, but not a lot of people would actually succeed in that. And so many of my fellow musician students at the time, and we were in the more of the popular music and the jazz programs in this school. So the mecca for a lot of different types of music, but especially that type, especially jazz and improvisatory music, was New York City. People around the world would go there just to learn, just to become the best, just to try to make it, just to meet new people and to network and to make their careers actually happen. So there were students before me that were kind of at another level beyond me, because I was kind of early on in my career at that time, that would leave my school and they would make kind of the pilgrimage, you know, to New York City. And they would go to school there, or they wouldn't even go to school there. They'd just live there and start gigging and start performing and meet people and try to hook up with, you know, some acts that they could work with, right? And others would go to Boston or other big cities, but New York was kind of the center of that, universe. It was the mothership, if you will. So eventually I said, I've gotten as far as I can here in my kind of just my own skin, my own local marketplace. And it's not a lot to do here, not a lot more to learn here. I was at the top of my game. I was at the top of the musicians in my particular lineage at the time. And so I said, I got to go. And I had a talk with my mentor, and he said, you need to go. You need to do that because this is going to change your life for the better. And I really desired to get whatever that magic was that you could get when you'd go to New York City and we'd see other people. They'd come back from New York and we'd play with them and we were like, oh my gosh, you got so much better. You've learned so much. How did that happen? Right? And it's not to get into the details of it, but I finally made the trip. And I remember the day that I arrived in New York City. I had a car full of my life, basically. We had packed to the gills, and my family had brought me up there. We had taken a road trip to get up there. And, I'm living right on Broadway, on right south of Martin Luther King Boulevard, right, 125th and Broad. And, all these tenement buildings all over the place. And we look for our particular address and we find it, and we walk in. We walk into the facade or to the entryway of this tenement building. So it's like 6-7 story high, right? And we walk in, and I didn't really have a sense of this, but my mother at the time, who was dropping me off, had a sense of this. She could smell the urine in the stairwell, right? And she's like, oh my gosh, you're gonna live here? And we go up the stairs and we find the room that I'm gonna live in. I was living with some roommates, and we were all gonna kind of share the rent. And we walk in and we see these little holes in the walls, and there's a place where you mice have gone, right? And we're from like the suburbs, where none of this stuff is really acceptable, and it's cost of living's a lot lower, so it's pretty easy to get a halfway decent kind of new home construction kind of thing, or at least a decent apartment. And this building was probably, I don't know, like 80 years old or something by that time. And so you can see the look on my mother's face, and I'm looking at her like, oh my gosh, she didn't even let me stay here. She's like, you can't stay here, you can't live here, right? And so we kind of work it out, and we try to kind of massage her a little bit, me and my new roommates. And so we finally move our stuff in. Eventually, a couple days later, the family leaves, and I'm on my own. Like, for the first time in my life. Like, this is literally the first time I'm away from my home city, and I'm in New York City, like in the middle of one of the tougher cities on earth. But over the coming year, after dealing with just learning my way around the city, learning my way around school, realizing I was now at the bottom of the pecking order in this new world that I was in, and just fighting to try to learn, who am I going to be? What am I going to become in this world? I found a teacher. I found a gentleman. His name's Dick Oates, and he was really the kind of the top sax player in New York City at the time when it came to a very specific type of music. And I would go to his apartment downtown once a week, and we'd sit there for an hour or so, and we would just work together. He would just teach, and he would pass wisdom on to me, and he would work with me on my compositions and my musicianship, my chops, all that kind of stuff. And like little by little, I started learning from him all these things that I never would have learned had I not gone on that journey. But it was not easy. Everybody was better than me. There were no jobs because, everyone went to New York City and they all wanted to play at whatever the venues were. And so there some of the huge venues like the Blue Note and the Village Vanguard, some of the places where you want to play were here. But if you'd go on like an open mic night, basically what they call a jam session, you would be in a line of like 20 other players just for that night, right? And these are all locals, and none of them really want you to do well, right? So it would all be what we called in jazz lingo at the time, vibing each other, to have a funny look on our face and kind of, listening really closely for what was wrong, because, many of the players, not all, but many of the players kind of had a little bit of self-esteem issues at the time as well, trying to make it and hoping that they would be the next star, the next Dick Oates, basically. And so it was really, really tough. And there were a lot of trials. of all sorts that I faced, but one of the biggest ones was just, trying to make my career into something. And after a couple years there, I remember it was the middle of the summer and everybody had left for the summer. And I decided, since we had to keep paying rent, we had to keep our lease, because we had a longer lease than the school year. I said, you know what, we're going to be here anyway. I'm going to pay rent. Why don't I just stay here? And I'm all alone in New York City. I'm practicing and I'm, getting groceries, doing all this stuff, trying to just get by. But there's no classes. There's nothing else really going on. And I'm just all alone. And I just remember just feeling how rough it was, like to be in a city where you're surrounded by people. It's body to body, like 20 feet in whatever direction, there's going to be 10 more people, right? Even where you're living, because there's people above you and below you all over the place. You could see them, hear them, smell them, etc. And I remember realizing, it's like I've never been so surrounded by people and been so kind of feeling alone at the same time. I didn't know what to do about that. I was feeling like, why bother if what I'm going to experience in my life is just this, and feeling kind of like, where am I going? I wasn't just lonely. It wasn't just rough. I felt lost inside. You ever had one of those experiences where you thought you were doing the right thing? You went on a journey to accomplish something or experience something or to learn something. And at some point along the way, it was like, what's all this for? Who am I even? Or where the heck am I really going? Like where you went downhill before you actually made progress. It was exactly the experience I had, actually nearer to the end of this journey. And then finally, I remember, because I was involved with a lot of personal growth at the time, luckily, I was changing my mindset. And I finally said, you know what, if I'm really going to make something happen for myself and actually break through this kind of like just being on my own and not getting anywhere, I'm going to have to connect with some people, and I'm going to have to get out of my own way, so to speak, and be courageous enough to go out there and really hustle and beat the street. And I started, like, every couple days I would go out and I would bring, a pile of, demo tapes basically of my music, and I would pass them around to various venues. And I started networking with other musicians. And then when I would get a gig, I'd invite them to play, and then we'd kind of work together, and I'd get everybody's phone number. And I remember I had like a black book of, like hundreds of different bass players and drummers and different wind players and you name it, right? Rhythm players, etc. And eventually over time, I got to the point, I shared this just a couple of days ago. Check out the video if you can find it. I'll try to put a link up in the description and in a tag a little bit later. But I got a gig right downtown across from David Letterman in Times Square at a place called Martini's. And it was 3 nights a week, and they paid well. And I got to invite all my own musicians because it was my gig. I owned it. I was the manager of the gig. And when that happened, I thought, oh my gosh, I've actually kind of made it at this point. Like, not like I'm a huge star, but what do they say? You can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Like, this means something to me. And I got excited again. And then right before I left New York City, I was actually passing that gig on to somebody else because I didn't know when I was going to be back. Some of the musicians I had networked with had hooked up with an agent that was in, right downtown in New York City. And these people got gigs and got tours from all over the planet. And this guy had played with and was really good friends with at the time, who we had mutual respect for each other as musicians. He said, hey, do you want to go on tour in Japan for 7 weeks? I said, what? He said, yeah, we've got this tour and we're working on it. We got to do an audition though. So this manager showed up and hooked up with my group, and we kind of played this audition type of tape to show how entertaining we were, basically. And they sent it in. A couple weeks later, we got the gig. And so leaving New York City, we were all packing our bags, and all of us flew over to Sasebo, Japan, and we were on tour in Japan for, I think it was about 7 weeks. And that was a completely different journey for myself at that point. New challenges, new adventures. I won't even get into that. That's not the point. But when I came home finally, when I came home to my, my little hometown after that journey, my fellow musicians that I still knew from my hometown, they looked at me differently. They knew I had gone through some things. I felt like I had grown. I was at a different level in terms of who I knew myself to be. And I didn't even go on to play music professionally much after that. I mean, I still did for several years, and there's other stories around that. I won't get into that now. But the growth that I had experienced from that and who I had become as a professional, right? As a worker, as somebody who knew anything was possible, things that were even very rare and extraordinary. There's no way I could have replaced that. I mean, it was really priceless for me, regardless of what the payoff was career-wise. Does that make sense? I'll give you one more example. I had learned a lot around personal growth and coaching from a variety of different gurus, but Tony Robbins was one of the main ones at the time. This was like in the late 90s when he was going all over the place doing tons of seminars. Now he's doing everything virtually like I am. And so when I came home after my little pilgrimage to New York, or several years in New York, I was interested in becoming a professional coach, and I got lucky enough to get a call from Tony Robbins' company, and they said, we're looking for coaches. And I thought, this is exactly what I've been waiting for. This is what I've been looking for. And so this was like a dream come true in a way. I was like, wow, I could actually work as a coach for one of my favorite coaches, one of my favorite gurus, so to speak. And so I went out to San Diego, and they put us through 30 days of auditions. It was hardcore training. The longest day went like 36 hours. We stayed up all night. We were doing ropes courses, all sorts of just crazy stuff. And they were testing us like crazy just to see if we could like get through what they were dishing out to us. And about 50 or so coaches went through that training over a 30-day period. By the time the end of the training came, half of them were sent home. They were kicked off the island, so to speak. And I was left with a few fellow coaches, and we were offered the chance to come on board. And I long-term moved out there to work for Tony Robbins for, over a year and a half at that point. And when I went out there to actually kind of get tested, so to speak, I found some really amazing friends, but also some very special mentors. And throughout the years that I was working for Tony and I was working as a coach, those mentors and some additional mentors as well, including Tony, passed me just tons of priceless knowledge, tons of priceless skills and mindsets that I still have to this day, and I'm so grateful for. I mean, I remember talking to one of the new coaches at the time, and he was like really worried about whether or not this was the right move for him or if he was wasting his time, kind of like what I felt like when I was back in New York City. Like, does it even matter that I'm here? And he said, what am I doing here? I'm not a very good coach. And I said to him, his name was Jeff as well, actually. I said, Jeff, there's a reason why Tony called us out here. And I believe it's not because he just wanted to kind of pick a few people to work for him. I think he believes that there's something that he can give to us and something that's going to make it worth our while to be here. That's above and beyond just him hiring some coaches to do work for him. And it turns out I was right. Over the next year, I got so much mentoring, and I had such an amazing community, and we supported each other in so many special and in-depth ways. I can't even describe the kind of growth that I experienced entrepreneurially, as a coach, in my skill sets as a leader, and just my willingness and the intense way that I learned to serve and commit myself 100% to whatever my goals were at the time as well. And a lot of my fellow coaches who were there working with us in San Diego for, over a year, they experienced a lot of the same growth. Not every one of them went on to become a long-term coach that's running a coaching business like myself. But I think for them, it was probably kind of similar to my New York experience. Like that wasn't my destiny, but it was a journey that I went on. And it was really priceless for me. I built on that journey, another journey, which actually was a destination for me as well, which is, this industry. So it was challenging though. Not just that initial training and audition program or audition process that they took us through. They would give us like 50, 60, 70 clients to work with. I mean, most coaches nowadays, they're like full practice for them is 15, 20, 25 clients. I have a coach that I've worked with for years, and he hit about 22 clients the other day, and he's doing like 20,000 a month. And he said, "That's it. I got no more room." Right? Working for Tony, 70 or 80 clients was average. And I remember when I was getting around that number, and it was like I was working 5 days a week, nonstop, just on the phone, cranking with clients. And, I never got burnt out. I was always excited to do it. But if your question was, if you ever see the trainings that we run and our schedule, which is pretty extensive, and all the different, we do daily live streams now, right now, and all the material that we put out there and the marketing that we do as well. You might ask, I wonder if Sui ever gets tired. And the answer is yes, absolutely. And that was a very tiring time for me. And by the way, the whole time we're also going to seminars, learning from Tony's teachings, and going to other programs that our fellow coaches were sharing with us, and just all sorts of other journeys that we were going on, kind of sub-quests at the same point. And I think the biggest challenge that I faced was that at the end of that journey, I learned so much as an entrepreneur, even though I wasn't practicing as an entrepreneur. I was a practicing coach working within a business. I couldn't help but get ambitious for pursuing new goals outside of my position at Tony Robbins. I was really torn. I was torn between my business opportunities that were exploding at the time because of who I was becoming, and my mission to serve our clients and to serve Tony's company and to serve our fellow coaches and the people that I really cared about. And it got to the point where I couldn't balance both. And I remember the day that my boss at Tony Robbins asked me to leave. He said, "You're out of here. You can't work for us anymore. I'm kicking you out of the nest." And I would never have gone willingly, because I was really just, I had drunk the Kool-Aid, right? I was really like, this is my mission. I'm joining Tony on this mission, right? I said, okay, there's nothing I can do. I'm not the boss. I can't do anything about this. And I kind of slunk back to my apartment at the time with my tail between my legs, scratching myself on the head, thinking like, what the heck now? Who am I now without that identity? And I decided to go full bore on business for a while, but eventually I realized, after some other very challenging experiences, that who I was and who I still am as a coach, but I had to find a way to combine my ambition, my business acumen, my business drive with the commitment to serve, the mission, the profound privilege to serve people as well. And it wasn't more than a year later that I founded JTS Advisors as a coach, and eventually years later after that, we started training coaches and eventually became Master Coach University. This is just another step on that journey. In a way, that journey has not really ended for me, but I can tell you without any question that after I came back from San Diego, like 10 years later, after I had left Tony Robbins and I started my own business, after each of those trials and challenges, and after each of those kind of the completion of each of those story arcs, there was no way I was the same after those pilgrimage, after those quests, so to speak. I was never the same. And that is part of the coach's journey. It's transforming yourself before you expect to transform others. It's being willing to answer the call to adventure. Whatever that desire is for you, whatever that issue is for you, whatever that breakthrough needs to be for you. And there's different routes that people will take, but the only true route is one where at the end of that story, at the end of that journey, you're never the same. So let's talk about different coaches' journeys that you may be on or you may be considering taking on. In fact, if you're starting certification training right now, there's a good chance that you actually have just begun that journey, or you're on another leg to get even more advanced in that journey as well. So I'm going to share 4 different coaches' journeys with you here, and thankfully we're even kind of in focus here with the flip chart. So how's that for gratefulness? So first, there's a journey to win, right? There's a lot of coaches who, the reason why they're on the coach's journey is because they're an achiever. They want to win something. They're competitive and they're at the top of their game, or they want to be the best, right? And they've become the best probably in several areas. And so this is just the next leg of that kind of winning journey for them, that achiever's journey. And they lead as coaches from an achiever's perspective. They usually, their programs are about achievement. They're about, finding ways to get the gold, so to speak, to win the game, to beat the competition, right? A lot of this is competitiveness of like, who's the best? But a lot of this is just like, hey, what am I going to actually achieve here? Who am I becoming, so to speak? And that is definitely an archetypical coach. If you're more of an achiever type, and that's the journey that's brought you to coaching, or that's kind of what really is your motivation for being on this journey as a coach, like, hit me up in the chat. Let me know what your experience is. This personally, by the way, is not mine, right? Like, I'm not saying I don't achieve at times, but it's not the center of my particular kind of psychology. So I'm actually very interested in that kind of achiever's mindset, if you will. I work with a lot of achievers, but personally, that's not my primary drive. Second, there are some coaches that the reason why they go on the coach's journey is because they really need to escape something. They're trying to get away from maybe something negative, or they're trying to get out of somewhere or some experience. So certain coaches, for instance, there are some coaches that will help people with grief, or help people with depression, or help people with substance addiction, for instance, as I know Megan does. So these are areas of escape. Now it doesn't mean that that's necessarily what you are driven by, just because you're helping others escape something that's bad or negative, or that they want to rid themselves of, or a problem they want to, let's say, solve, but it's a way of getting away from something, so to speak. And so there are certain coaches, I know this is definitely not me, but there's certain coaches that they've escaped something in their life and they're driven to pass that on, or they're driven to help others escape because they're so passionate about the fact that they actually got out of, let's say, the 9 to 5, or got out of being an addict of some sort, or they got out of an abusive relationship, or they got out of depression, right? They got out of anxiety. There's all sorts of coaches that help in these areas. Sometimes the drive is, hey, I just want to escape, and I want to be the Pied Piper to lead others, not necessarily to the promised land, but out of the current pain and experience that they're in, out of the current place that they're in. All right, here's a third journey. And this one, think of it like kind of finding something or getting something. This is a journey or a quest to retrieve or regain or get something, right? Think of this like a searcher, somebody who's on a particular quest to search for something. Now, sometimes coaches will be searching for these things while they lead other people, right? While they're coaching, which is totally fine. I mean, I know in a lot of ways I'm a searcher, and I'm always looking for the next level. I'm always looking for like that ideal in my mind of who I can become and what kind of difference I can make and the impact that I can make in my life and my career and my family, etc. And so I'm like searching to retrieve or regain something or get something. Maybe that was lost in the past as well. Some of this can be actually based on pain, right? Like I lost something, I want to regain it, right? Or it could be a matter of getting something that you've never had before, getting love, getting the $1 million, getting the energy and the health and the vitality and the beauty, right? Or getting the self-actualization of a new career, a different life, right? There's all sorts of different things that might be gotten or achieved or retrieved or regained, so to speak. And these are searchers a lot of times that are driven by this particular journey. I definitely, I think this is probably my biggest one. My biggest journey is to regain something inside. There were times in my life where I felt I had lost myself, or I lost something within myself, or I hadn't been able to get the thing that I really dreamt of, and that, frankly, pain a lot of times drove me to become more, to search for more, to regain what was lost. And I think in me, that's made me into so much of a searcher that I want to find and share the ways that searchers can find with other searchers a lot of times. That's a big part of my journey that I think internally, at least, that I'm on. And then finally, sometimes there are coaches that are really, they're on a journey or a quest to stop something, right? They want to correct something. Now, a lot of times these are the most passionate coaches. They're looking to fix, like right or wrong, right? If you watch a revenge movie, these are the stop people, right? They're wholly passionate about like one narrow focus and righting the wrong, fixing what's broken, correcting what's incorrect, stopping the pain or stopping the issue, right? So these are very, very passionate coaches. They're some of the most effective coaches that I find. By the way, can you notice, and whichever one is yours, share in the chat. I'd love to see what your particular journey is that you think you identify the most with. But also, I think it's really exciting to be able to understand not just which one you're on, but also to appreciate what the upsides and downsides are of whatever journey that you're on. Like somebody that's looking to fix or correct something or escape from something, there's going to be some challenges there. There's going to be some things that they are going to struggle to lead their clients with, depending on who those clients are. I know for me, like that feeling of going after regaining or getting something, it's almost like I never have enough to give. I do more and more and more, and I put out more content and work with more clients, and it's like it's never enough, right? And so sometimes I pass that on to my clients, and unfortunately, and I got to work on that piece. The real competitive ones, they're so busy winning, a lot of times they beat their clients, right? And their clients don't get as much value from them. So it's helpful, I think, to know what journey that you're on, what's driven you up until this point, because you might have been on an escape journey or a win journey, and then maybe you move over to a regain journey, right? That might shift your entire being. That might shift your entire motivation for why you're on this external journey in the first place. Now, I always like to say, if your primary drive is not to serve, is not to truly contribute to people, eventually your coaching is going to suffer. And that doesn't mean your business doesn't go well. I mean, I know a lot of winners and very, very driven achievers that have the biggest businesses. I mean, I work with some of those businesses. We're partnered with them, or I coach them, or I work with their coaches. And so you could do very well in business in any of these kind of archetypical journeys. But what I do find is that there are particular journeys where if it takes you too much away from the contribution effort that you have, the commitment that you have to serve, your coaching and your contribution suffers. And I see invariably a lot of those organizations, even if they're really successful business-wise, they actually come to us for coaching. They come to us to provide the coaching to their clients because they know that my team, myself and my team, we have such a deep commitment to serve that a lot of times we can add more value to their clients than they can with their particular journey that they're on. And again, that's not making anything wrong. It's just good to be aware of what's going to empower your coaching the most and where your bread is buttered, if you will. So those are some of the coaches' journeys that you might be on. I'm going to go ahead and pop over to, this is a very different conversation we're about to begin here, but this is really the key, I think, to understanding whatever journey you might be on. So this is more of kind of a Native American way of talking about a journey, so to speak. And there are other wisdom traditions that will be very similar to this. You start out on kind of in a starting point, right? And you decide that you're on a quest for something, or you're going to make a pilgrimage, you're going to strike out to have a breakthrough or experience something or win something or escape something, like all that kind of stuff that we talked about. Whatever your drive is, there's different stories for different leaders, different heroes, different coaches. And so you go along and you find that there's lots of twists and turns on this journey. You think that you're just going to go in this, like straight line, but you really don't. You immediately, as soon as you start that journey, you find that you made a mistake or you're on the wrong road or something. And so you have these twists and turns, and you go along and you keep going, And you keep getting farther and farther away from the center of your own existence. You get farther and farther away from home, so to speak. You start where you are, but you journey outward, right? And eventually, as you track with this journey, you discover that you're in this, I don't want to call it no man's land, but you find yourself far from where you started, far from maybe who you are, far from your original home base, the center of your existence, kind of where you came from, if you will. And so in the Native American tradition, how the story goes is that at some point you discover this and you realize you've been on this journey outward, you've been to all these places, you've had all these learnings, you've experienced so much, but then you finally say, you know what, it's time to start retracing my steps. And you turn around and you start to go back. And you're on the same journey, but you're experiencing it in reverse. You're seeing all the twists and turns and the transformation and the breakthroughs that you've had, and you're bringing this new world to you're like bringing this to all these points on the map as you retrace your steps. And eventually you come to the end of this journey where you end up right back where you started, at the center of your own existence. You end up at home, so to speak. You remember who you were. You remember who you are. You remember where you came from, so to speak. And you re-experience that again. But of course, you're not really the same, right? You haven't regressed. You brought all this from these outer journeys into the center of your own existence, right? And so who you are is transformed, even though you're right back where you started. And so even though it's the same place, maybe physically, spiritually, it's not. You arrive home at the core of your own existence. And so this is a cyclical thing, as you could see. You kind of loop and spiral. And at the same time, there's a striking out that it takes. That's one of the reasons, by the way, why in certification training, what you're going to experience is a set of assignments, tests, experiences, clients that will provide for you that will bring you outside of yourself. It kind of forces you to become more than who you started out as, right? And that could be a very challenging experience because we're kind of like pulling you out of your skin, right? You're not the same person doing our techniques that we're giving you. And we're having you jump through these hoops and take on these challenges and assignments. And like that's not the automatic thing that you would normally do. But ultimately, the most committed coaches in our programs, they do what it takes and they will go outside of themselves, go outside of their comfort zone, so to speak. Because if you want to become the master coach that you could be, if you want to be the greatest expression of who you are on the planet of contribution, then you got to actually be committed to being more than who you already are that shows up. Because if not, you don't have to be trained in anything. You don't have to be any more than who you already are because that's just fine. That's enough. There's no need for training then, right? And by the way, some coaches mistakenly will go through like our core competency certificate programs or certification training for that matter, thinking, you know what, I already know all this stuff. I'm already everything I need to be. I've already been everywhere. I already know everything. And I'm just here to like get the rubber stamp. I'm just here to get the certificate. And very, very quickly they find out how mistaken they actually are, at least in our trainings, because those challenges pull them out. They pull them out beyond themselves. And that's not always the most natural experience. It seems a little artificial. It seems very uncomfortable at times. And the truth is because it is. And so I've kind of zoomed in here to like think of this as one cycle for your quest, so to speak, or for your coach's journey. And these are classic moments in the cycle. These are classic stages in the story of your journey. And I'm going to take you through this for a second because each one of these you're going to experience in the next 4 weeks. each one of these you will actually go through if you fully participate in certification. And so I want to give you a little introduction to this so you kind of know what's coming. And we've never really done this before. And, I kind of feel bad because like the last decade plus of coaches, they've gone on this journey and been just like surprised by it, maybe a little blindsided. So for the first time ever, I'm actually going to share this, and hopefully we'll have, you'll be even more geared up for what you're about to experience. So you start, as every coach does, at home base, wherever you are now, right? And first of all, there's this call to adventure that every hero, every leader, every coach hears, or else they wouldn't even bother getting started on the journey in the first place. So now part of this is just like marketing, right? Part of this is outreach. Part of this is context and content and communities that call you forth, right? So you're just here, like really comfortable at home, maybe not totally satisfied, right? Maybe you want to escape. Maybe you want to correct things. Maybe you want to right the wrongs. Maybe you really do want to win. But, you're just kind of like in your own skin at home, and you hear, this call to adventure, and it beckons you forth. It gets you started. It gets you off the starting block, right? And that's, basically if you have enrolled in one of our trainings at this point, you've enrolled in certification, this has already happened for you. Now, if you're listening to this, you haven't enrolled yet, and you're about to like tonight and get that last slot, this might be it for you. I mean, this might be your call to adventure, right? So that call to adventure occurs, and it's very exciting, and it's kind of, something that we talk about a lot. There's that moment of stepping off the starting blocks and beginning on the yellow brick road. This is classic in wisdom literature and a lot of movies and novels and stories. But there comes a point where along your journey, you eventually find a mentor. You meet the mentor. You meet the guru. Now, by the way, maybe I'm standing in that place for you in this training, right? But maybe we haven't talked yet. Maybe we haven't met yet. Maybe I've just had a quick phone call with you. Who knows? Maybe you're just like, you met me today, but not really, because we're, kind of separated by this, live stream world that we're in. So you haven't quite met me yet. I mean, you've met an aspect of me, right? You've met who I am in public, whatever that looks like, right? But there's going to be a point when we get into training sessions, and we're going to be you're going to be here on the journey, and we're going to be interacting in more of a trainer-trainee type of format, right? Or coach-client type of format, or a variety of those things. And I have a job here to pass something on to you. The mentor, the master coaches you'll work with, for instance, and myself in certification, we're here to offer you some things, and there's a whole variety of experiences that come from your mentor that you might imagine. And anything you can imagine, we'll actually go throughout many of these trainings within Master Coach University. So you're going to meet that mentor, and this is not always a comfortable meeting. Sometimes this is a eureka moment for people, but sometimes it's like, I don't want to listen to this mentor. I don't like what they're telling me, right? A lot of times here, there are epiphany moments, right? So there's the epiphanies, but a lot of times there's also a wall that's put up, or a rejection of the learnings, right? There is a refusal. Sometimes there's a refusal of the call to adventure. Many times also there's a refusal of what the mentor offers the trainee, so to speak, the adventurer as well. So all sorts of things can happen at this point. And, when we get into this part of the journey, take on the mentoring as best you can. Take on the training as fast and as quickly and as powerfully as you possibly can, because that's what will propel you on to the next step in your journey. If you just reject this, you can just go around and around and around in a little cycle in this tiny little world called, really, it's just your way of staying home, because you don't want to take on the training, right? You don't want to take the coaching. So be willing to try it on, and really try it on for real, not just like say, well, I don't know if that makes sense to me logically, so I'll just kind of do my own thing. The students that we work with that kind of struggle the most in terms of adding value as coaches or in their businesses, usually the ones that put this wall up and they kind of just really just want to stay home, and they're really not on a journey. They just like to act like they are. You ever seen anybody like that? Who like they wave the banner and act like, hey, I'm this, I'm that, I'm an achiever, I'm a coach, I'm a leader, but they're not walking their talk. It's just more for them a feel-good moment so they can pat themselves on the back, a little bit more of an ego stroke. That's not this kind of journey. That's not a true adventure that those individuals are on. So you got to decide, like, you could be in this training and just kind of like mark time and not really participate. There's plenty of students that do. That's up to them. They're free to do it either way. But the ones that truly go through this experience, they really go on this adventure, and they take the coaching, they take the training, they take it on, and they digest it as best that they can. So if you've ever seen one of those movies, I mean, like Star Wars is a great example. Luke and is with Yoda, and he does reject some of the gifts that the mentor offers, but he works really hard throughout Empire Strikes Back, right? Like, he's really a great student in a lot of very, very in-depth ways. He really gives his best, and he grows as a result of that, right? So this is what happens on that part of the journey. And I'm here for you in that role. The master coaches that are working with you are here for you in that role. Frankly, fellow students will be here for you sometimes in that role for a variety of reasons, because they've gone on a journey that you're yet to go on as well. And so all of that is exactly what the doctor ordered at that stage in the journey. So again, just to reiterate, every part of this journey is something that we have created a facsimile of, or created an experience so that you can actually be on this journey naturally. And I didn't do this consciously at the time. I mean, when we first created these trainings, it wasn't like, well, I'm going to take them on a quest, right? It was just, I thought about what's going to make master coaches, and I offered these things. And then what happened is, the real stories of our existence, all they really do is they replicate the human psyche. That's why stories are so impactful, because they're really just reflections of who we are. They're external abstractions of who we are. They're ways to kind of create a narrative around how the human psyche works, tapping into the mind, tapping into the soul, so to speak. And so I think I just kind of naturally did that. And now, in retrospect, people go on this coach's journey as they go through our trainings. So this next stage in the journey, once they've gotten some information and some knowledge and they've met the mentor, they're not done with the mentor. The mentor, I'm not done with you yet, but they go through, these are not maybe the best drawings of it, but they go through some tests. They go through some trials, some challenges. And so these tests, there's uncertainty. Sometimes you'll fail these tests. Sometimes you'll succeed. But these tests, as a coach, they have to do with things like practicing the coaching, or doing the work involved, doing your homework, right? Doing your assignments, like doing what it takes to just learn from the mentor. Part of it could be just the time that it takes. A lot of times our students struggle with managing their time and making sure that they're putting enough time into training so that they're actually stay on the journey. That's a test as well. If you're doing this as a second career or as a next level for you, and you've got to, kind of survive on this journey, sometimes the test is just sticking around in the training. I know I'm working with some trainees right now. They're just dealing with time and money challenges, and they're working through that. That's literally, for them, it's a part of those challenges, those tests, those challenges that they face along this journey that a hero or a coach would take. But that's not the most challenging part. This might look like it for a lot. And by the way, one of the reasons why it looks like it is because people bail at this point. Those trainees, sometimes they go through some of these tests and they're like, that's it. I'm not taking the test anymore. I'm ejecting. I'm going home. I'm going to take my ball and go home. I'm not playing this game no more, right? So they never actually experience the greatest challenge that any of our trainings, especially certification, has to offer. If they make it through some of those initial tests and those assignments and those challenges, at some point, I'm telling you this, in the next 4 weeks, you will experience this at some point. At some point, they reach what we call the abyss. In this abyss, horrible job drawing it, but think of it like a chasm that they could fall into, or like a devil that they face, kind of the ultimate challenge, so to speak, the ultimate failure, if you will, the ultimate loss, the ultimate fear. There's different emotions that kind of are reflected in the abyss, or the devil, or the ultimate boss that you face in the boss battle, So it's different things for different people. Some of them, for some coaches, some of our trainees, it's their resistance to something. For some trainees, it's their fear. They're afraid, they face their fear, and then they can't face it and they don't want to face it anymore. Or for instance, like for an achiever, a winner, it's like sometimes it's anger. It's like they working with a client who's not an achiever and they get angry and they just, they can't hold back and they don't pull punches, but it doesn't work for them. They're not able to pass on that achievement to another client that they work with. There's all sorts of different emotions that people will go through when they start to face the shadow self, when they start to face down the devil, they start to face down the abyss, they start to meet the dragon that they really need to slay, so to speak. And by the way, it feels like that when you get to that point. It's not so much that. It's not a dragon, it's not a devil, it's not an abyss, but it'll feel that way to you. That's why we paint that picture of this part of the story, is because for you, it's like something that's going to kill you. It's like something that's going to torture you. It's like something that where you're going to lose yourself as a result of continuing that journey. That's what it looks like, but it's not that. Now, for some people, they'll go on journeys where they actually literally fall into an abyss, right? There was a movie about that, about a decade ago. Or they literally meet the devil. They meet somebody who they have to slay or beat or escape, right? This is part of physical stories as well, but for us, it's a mental one. For us, it's a spiritual one. And so it'll feel like this, even though it's not like this. But this is where, even though you've had your limitations in this entire cycle, going down and descending into the abyss, so to speak, this is the point where your limitations become catastrophic. Where if you hold on to your fear, or you hold on to your resistance, or hold on to your ego or your anger, if you don't face your shadow self, the part of you that can't or won't or couldn't or didn't, the part of you that is just never going to be enough, so to speak, for whatever reason, or can't face that aspect of yourself, when you get to that shadow self where your limitations become catastrophic, you have one of two options to take at that point. You can either face down the devil and live through it, or don't and die, so to speak. And I don't mean the death of you. I mean the death of your dream, the death of your higher self, the death of, finishing your journey. And there's many coaches that don't do that, and I can imagine why. I mean, they're leaders, and they take all sorts of shit from all sorts of different people, as well as the mentor, right? And so they put their tail between their legs, and they cut their journey short. It does happen. And so that's the reason I'm sharing this with you partially, is because, not just because this is a kind of a cool thing to talk about and document, not just because this is what you're going to experience with us, and not just because I think this is very compelling to understand this for ourselves, so we can also share it and utilize it with our clients as well to see where they are in this journey. But so when you get to this point where it's like, that's it, I've had it, I can't do it, not another second, I can't deal with that devil, I'm not going to that abyss, I'm not going to face that part of myself, because I've divorced that part of myself. I can't be that can't be me. I can't deal with that person, that client, whatever it is for you, that you actually face it and you continue on your journey. Because this venture into the abyss is one that in every story, every hero, every leader gets through. But they only get through it if they stay on the journey, not if they, hijack themselves back home. So you face it and live, or you don't and you die, so to speak. And by the way, you might have been on some of these journeys before where you didn't face that part of yourself. And there was a death, there was a little bit of a death there for you. And if that's the case, what's great is, the truth is, even if you're home and I'm calling you to adventure again, you got to start over to some extent. That's fair to say, and that's not fun. But at least you know that you've gone down the wrong road. At least you know that it was a mistake to go home. At least you know that was what that was. That's actually part and parcel to growing and becoming who you could become. If only you were courageous enough to not take no for an answer. If only you were willing to do whatever it takes to get past that. If only you were willing to face whatever parts of yourself you have never been willing to face, that you never had the courage to face, to just go for it and put it all on the line for once. for yourself and your clients and your life. That's the moment of the abyss. That's the moment of the shadow self, of facing that devil down, facing the dragon. Now, for those that get through this on our journey, for instance, eventually they get to what's really usually what everybody's after, which is this treasure, so to speak. This is where you've truly transformed yourself, or you've worked with other people and made a difference for them as a coach. You've learned what you needed to learn on this journey. You've had the breakthrough. That's what all that is about. And so now you have this kind of magic amulet, this treasure, this award or reward, so to speak, this inner transformation. And eventually you return home on this journey with this thing in tow, right? You've got that treasure. You've got that kind of magic. You've got that mojo, whatever that is. You return with that treasure, but as a result, two things occur. Number one is, you've been given these powers now, and you share it with other people. You give to others in a way. You now have a community of people, and they might have been around you before, but now they're actually being impacted at a higher level, at a deeper level as a result of who you've become. And you're kind of at a higher plane of existence, so to speak. You've ascended in this particular example, right? You've ascended from the abyss. You've faced your shadow self. You've gotten the reward, and now you've brought that home to your community, to the people that need it the most from you. So you've ascended to the higher plane. That's the first element. And you're sharing this gift with others. But at the same time, you also have a way to go public with this and show people the reward that you've experienced on the inside at first. Because usually when you get this treasure, it's right after you slayed the dragon, right? You're in the pit still. You're in the cave still. You're on the job still. You're in the journey still. You're not home. Nobody even necessarily knows that you have this yet. So when you bring it home, your certificate, so to speak, and certification training, right? Or you finished your journey, you can now go coach, you can lead, you can live at a different level. That's what's available when you've ascended to that higher level. Even though you might look like you're in the same place, you're a different person. You are in a different place at some level. Does that make sense? So this is the kind of the journey that every coach or every leader or every hero, every pilgrim takes. And the question is, where did you get stopped? Or where do you see yourself getting stopped on this journey? Because what's going to happen is you're going to face some of these elements, but I can guarantee you, like in certification, I'll be there for you. We're going to have tests that you need to pass, no doubt. But over on the other side, of that chasm, on the other side of the devil, on the other side of the dragon, there's going to be that reward. And when you experience that reward, the juice of that, as I said last night, will get you. And you'll share that with others. And that's going to be a domino effect, a cause set in motion. No one can take that away from you. You'll never be the same, as I mentioned before, but neither will the people that you coach. Neither will your family, neither will your friends, neither will the businesses that you touch or make a difference for work for that matter. It's another higher existence, so to speak. Now, what happens is that you can continue this journey, of course. I mean, this journey doesn't end here just because you've gotten to this higher plane. This happens again and again, and you keep going to higher and higher planes, so to speak. You raise your consciousness every time. So this journey never ends. This is a mountain that has no top. The only question is, what is the next leg in your journey? What's the next quest for you, so to speak? And who are the mentors and the calls to adventure and the tests that you're going to need to take on that journey? And what's the shadow self that you need to face? I'm doing my own right now in a variety of different areas in my business. What are yours? Because you're not necessarily going to do the same ones that I'm at. You might be ahead of me or behind me. I don't know, on whatever journey we're talking about, right? But you're in a place in this journey, and you can actually start propelling yourself in a upward spiral that elevates who you are, elevates yourself as a leader. It elevates your life, and it elevates your clients as well. Because the higher you grow on this journey, the more people that you can help, the more people that you can make a difference for. I was just checking to make sure we didn't have more here. So The higher you grow, the more valuable your help becomes for your clients. Sometimes coaches will come to me and they'll say, my clients are lousy. They can't even afford me, or they don't even understand what I'm saying. Well, maybe that's because you haven't gotten to the point where you can help the clients that you want to work with. Maybe you're not at that level yet. I see that all the time in the world of coaching. As you grow, the challenges, the tests, and the shadow selves, so to speak, these challenges that used to scare you, that used to upset you, they no longer do. Because you can encapsulate them. You're bigger now. These little tiny gremlins or these little tiny dragons, when you get really big, you go to the next level, you encapsulate them. And it's like, later on, 10 years later on the journey, 10 quests later, you look at those initial challenges and they're like nothing for you. The things that used to be giant demons for you and your illusions, it's like, nothing. Like it doesn't even jar you. You just kind of flick it away. You flick that dragon away, so to speak. You're now at a higher level, so you can encapsulate those challenges. And by the way, that doesn't mean your challenges are over. There's always another challenge. There's always a new devil, right? There's always a new quest. And the bigger challengers, the bigger demons arise. They do tend to arise as you become capable to face them. So what's beautiful about this is there's always going to be another dragon to slay. The only question is, who do you need to become to get to the point where you can slay that dragon? Where that's a dragon you could even face. And I don't know what that is for you, because I'm not you and I'm not on your journey, but I know that every coach takes this journey. And the coaches that work with us, if they really go through the training that we provide them, they're on this journey. And they grow and they grow and they grow. And I've seen amazing transformation as a result for them and the clients that they touch as well. So, two things. First thing is, take a look at where you are on this journey. Think about what your trials and demons are that you need to slay and you need to deal with. And then also prepare to actually make it through this cycle in the next 4 weeks within certification training. Second, for those that aren't in training right now, like I said, I think I have a slot left if somebody hasn't taken it already with the email I sent out today. So reach out to me if you want to be a part of that and you want to be on this journey. This is your call to adventure officially. But then beyond that also, I love to see that this story gets to our brothers and sisters, our other coaches and leaders and managers and people helpers and therapists and people out there that, they're on their own journey. They maybe don't even know it yet. So if you could share this with people that you care about, with other leaders that are out there trying to make a difference and make a difference for themselves and their families, if nobody else. And but beyond that also, if you like whatever you're on, whether it's on Facebook or especially YouTube, that tells YouTube that I made a difference for you today. And so, I want to reach as many as we can, but I also want to make sure that what I'm providing here is valuable to you. So if it is, comment, like, and if you want more of this, just subscribe wherever you are, or join us in certification training. I look forward to working with you then. So I'll talk to you very soon, probably tomorrow, the next couple days, if we're in training together, and I look forward to that.